Hi, welcome to another episode of Spark Coaching. Have you ever had a conversation and walked away thinking, why did that feel so awkward? Why was that person so standoffish? Why did something feel off in that conversation? You think back, you weren't being rude. You didn't try to one-up anyone. Somehow the vibe was just off. And later you start to wonder, maybe I came across as arrogant. And what people don't realize is that arrogance in conversation isn't about bragging. It's not about showing off. It's more subtle than that. It's the way we respond when someone shares something about themselves. Let me give you an example. Let's say your friend says to you, I enjoy running in the morning because I think what that does is it sets me up for a day of being really productive. Now let's say you've tried running in the past and it doesn't work for you, and in fact it makes you more tired. You decide, okay, well, let me relay my personal experience to, continue this conversation. And so you say running in the morning just makes you tired all day. I think it's better to run at night. Now, in your mind, you've just shared your experience. Nothing wrong with that. You've continued the conversation. But what you've done is you've set up a dynamic where you're now on opposing sides. So the other person will have to try to justify, oh, well, for me, morning jogging makes me more energized. And then you realize what you've done. You've realized, oh no, I've set them up on the opposite side. Let me placate them. And so you say, oh, well, if it works for you, then that's great. But you see how insincere that sounds. You started off trying to be supportive, but actually you've become dismissive of their experience and what they're trying to share. And by bringing yourself into it, you've almost brought a benchmark for them to then compare. Let me give you another example. Someone says to you, I've been trying to meditate. I found even 10 minutes a day makes me feel calmer. And you reply, I've tried meditating, but it doesn't work for me. I'd rather spend those 10 minutes doing something more productive. Again, you're relaying your experiences, but what have you done? Again, you've set yourself up as the opposing view. Now that person will have to justify their 10 minutes. And then you realize, oh, what have I done? I've set myself up on the opposing side. I made them feel as if what they're doing isn't good. That's not my intention. Let me go back and tell them, oh, it's okay. If it works for you, that's good. But again, because you've set yourself up as a benchmark, then I feel like I have to justify it. And it's a very subtle dismissal. Your version becomes the standard, and then your reassurance at the end doesn't quite land as genuine. Now, you're not making mean-spirited comments here. These are everyday habits, but over time, they make people feel measured against you. That's why conversations like this can come across as arrogant, even if you had the best of intentions. Because you're setting yourself up as a gold standard there. And it's totally natural to have a conversation this way. It's conversational symmetry. We often share our version of something in order to try to connect. But if that symmetry creates a contrast, your way versus my way, any kind of backtracking and reassurance will sound fake. Because you've started with an instant contrast. So every chat then becomes a debate. That's not why someone is sharing this information with you. You have to think about why they're sharing that information with you. Because as soon as you give your opposing view, that person will think, oh, should I be doing that as well? As in, they will then compare whatever you say to what they're doing. You'll be the benchmark. And that will trigger a certain amount of defensiveness. And then backtracking and saying, if that works for you, great. Just sounds dismissive because that frame has already shifted. All right, so let's go back to those examples and think, how could we change that dynamic? Someone shares about running in the morning. Instead of saying running in the morning doesn't work for me, you could ask, what is it that you like about running in the morning? Instead of saying, I've never had the patience for meditation, you could ask, what's been the biggest benefit for you so far? Again, these are open questions and not counter statements. Counter statements create opposition, whereas questions create exploration. You can get to the same point that you're trying to make through open questions, not counter statements. And I think you'll find if you try that, you'll have much better conversations and people will want to talk to you about different things because they'll think that, oh, you're interested in what I have to say. You're not trying to dismiss me. You're not trying to put yourself as the gold standard. So remember that. Statements create opposition. Questions create exploration. What's got you into that? How's it going so far? What's been the biggest challenge? All these questions. Explore the conversation. Explore what they've asked because they want to share something with you. So don't turn it into a comparison. Turn it into an exploration because that's what people want. If you want to share about yourself, perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with sharing about yourself. It's at the right time when you've given that person the opportunity to share about themselves first. You then think, okay, now it's time for me to share. And then if that person wants to know how it works for you, they'll ask, right? If they're not asking, they don't want to know about how you find meditation, how you find running in the morning. They're just sharing a piece of their life, and you should be happy to explore and share that piece of life without having to ram your opposing view down their throats. So here's the challenge for you. This week, what I want you to do is when someone shares something, resist the urge to give that opposing view. For me, it was different. It was like this. Instead, ask an open question. And just notice how that conversation becomes a lot lighter, a lot more open. You just want to give that person space to share more. Not to set up an opposition, not to set up a position where that person now has to justify what they're doing. You're asking open questions to get more from them. It's not about saying less yourself. It's about giving that other person space to talk. So when you say something like, if that works for you, that's great, you're validating someone, which you think makes sense, and the words are positive. But as I mentioned, it creates a sort of a quiet dismissal. That sincerity is missing because the conversation has already been framed as a comparison. What you want to do is give authentic validation. And when people feel genuinely validated, they don't need that reassurance afterwards. If it works for you, that's great. Because that validation is just tacked on. It rings hollow. So that sincerity that you want isn't about being overly nice. It's about the content of your response. It's about the order of your response. Validate first, ask a question, keep the conversation open and focus on them, and then only, if it helps, share your perspective. Just a minor bit about the role of body language in this. It's not about what you say. Sometimes it's also about how you say it. You could have the perfect words, but if you're crossing your arms, looking distracted, or rushing your tone, people will still feel dismissed. Research on non-verbal communication shows that eye contact, nodding, leaning forward slightly, all signal curiosity. As opposed to glancing at your phone or shifting your body away while saying, oh, that's great. Same words, different impact. So if you want to come across as open, don't just focus on the language. Let your body reinforce the message. What I want you to do next time is think about your body next time you're talking. Think about what happens when you say these things. Because I think you'll find often when you're making this inauthentic validation, your body language is also inauthentic. Let me now give you a simple framework you can use to avoid sounding arrogant and to validate the person that you're having a conversation with. I call it the 3C method. Curiosity, connection, contribution. So curiosity, once they've shared something, you start off with a genuine question. For example, you might say, what got you into meditation? And curiosity might continue. You might continue to ask genuine questions to get a really good overview of what they're trying to say. And you can gauge by the depth of their answers whether they want to continue to share or whether they're happy to stop at that point. Then next, connection. Acknowledge their experience. After they've shared something, you could say something like, that makes sense. I can see how that would help with stress or whatever fits the situation. You are acknowledging that experience that they have as a valid experience, making that connection. And you might continue to do that as they share things. Finally, and I mean finally, contribution. Only when that conversation has run a certain amount of time that you feel is appropriate and they're now shared everything that they want to share, then you can add your perspective. Frame it as an extra, not as a comparison. For example, you might say something like, for me, journaling didn't work as well because, and then you can have a conversation about how perhaps you could use some of those tricks, the techniques that they've talked about in your life. And again, you're validating their experience. You're confirming that actually this is a conversation between equals. So the key takeaway is resist the urge to jump straight into, well, here's what I do. Instead, ask, validate, and contribute. And what you'll notice is that people will open up more. They'll start to feel comfortable around you, and you'll come across as genuinely curious and confident, not arrogant, not the benchmark that everyone should live up to. Thanks for listening, and make sure that you share this with as many people as you can. See you next time.